under the blazing sun of the late Roman Empire, when whispers of rebellion spun through marble halls and the foundations of ancient gods trembled beneath the rise of a strange new faith, Emperor Diocletian sat upon his gilded throne in Nicomedia, his face carved in stone-like resolve, as advisors murmured fears that Christianity was poisoning the empire from within. And so began what history would call the Great Persecution, a storm of cruelty that would darken the Roman soul. At first, decrees swept across provinces demanding citizens sacrifice to the pantheon or lose their rights, and temples crackled with offerings. But many Christians stood firm, their quiet defiance echoing louder than Rome's triumphant legions, and this infuriated Diocletian, who believed unity meant survival. So he summoned his ruthless prefect Galerius, a man who wore brutality like armor, and together they birthed tortures that would echo through centuries. Prisoners were herded into dank dungeons where the air tasted of rust and screams scratched the walls, guards applying iron claws to tear flesh, ripping ribbons from the backs of believers who refused to bow. Yet even then some whispered prayers, fueling Diocletian's rage. So iron hooks were heated red and pressed against skin, the sizzling sound filling chambers like demonic applause, and yet their resolve remained, pushing the emperor to design slower, more savage punishments. In the colonnaded courtyard, wooden frames called the rack stretched limbs until joints popped like snapping twigs, victims gasping in agony as soldiers demanded they deny their faith. While elsewhere, molten lead was poured over exposed limbs, burning away muscle until only charcoal black scars remained. And the smell of scorched flesh haunted the gardens where statues of old gods watched coldly, as if approving of the suffering. And when the sun dipped beneath the horizon, victims were tied to pillars and flayed alive, strips of skin curling like parchment while Diocletian's watchers observed the spectacle, yet still many would not break. Their hymns, sung through bloodied lips, echoed through corridors and angered the emperor so deeply that he doubled the persecution, commanding that entire families be chained to stone arenas where wild beasts were released, animals tearing through innocent crowds as the roar of Rome drowned any scream of mercy. Blood painting the sand like a crimson fresco, and the survivors, if any, were dragged to iron chairs heated until glowing, their bodies pressed against the metal, skin blistering and popping, yet some died with serene eyes, believing salvation awaited them. The emperor then ordered the stake of fire, where prisoners were coated in oil and lit as human torches to illuminate evening banquets, the flames dancing like hellish banners, guests sipping wine while watching bones blacken and skulls crack, servants sweeping ashes aside at dawn. Yet rumors spread that the martyr's courage was inspiring thousands, and Diocletian demanded public book burnings, seizing scriptures and hurling them into raging pyres, hoping to erase not only the people but the idea itself. But ideas are stronger than iron, and even when libraries of faith turned to embers, secret gatherings persisted in subterranean catacombs, where children whispered prayers by candlelight, and elders spoke of hope beneath frescoes painted by trembling hands. Furious, Diocletian ordered crucifixions along the main roads, dozens of bodies strung like grotesque warning signs, their cries drowned by clattering chariots, and he introduced tortures that defied imagination. Eyes gouged slowly with bronze spoons, fingers crushed beneath mallets, tongues sliced out and hung around necks as symbols of silence, while soldiers forced prisoners to walk barefoot across fields of sharpened glass, each step carving new agony, all while chanting prayers. Yet even when cut open, when iron spurs were driven into rib cages to pry them apart, countless martyrs refused to surrender, and their bravery spread like wildfire through provinces, turning Diocletian's fear into obsession. So he formed shadow courts where sentences were declared without witness or defense, branding innocents with searing symbols across their faces, the letters burning shame into bone as the crowd looked on helplessly. In coastal cities, prisoners were bound to weighted chains and lowered slowly into icy waves, their lungs collapsing as they drowned, bodies washing ashore like broken scarecrows tangled in seaweed. And elsewhere, entire congregations were locked inside churches and set ablaze, flames twisting from windows like hell's ribbon, while inside the faithful sang hymns that drifted upward like smoke to the heavens. All the while Diocletian believed he was saving Rome, but the empire's heart began to rot beneath the weight of cruelty. Statues cracked, temples emptied, whispers grew louder, and within his palace walls, paranoia slithered like a serpent, poisoning his sleep until he dreamt of martyrs staring down at him with hollow eyes, their charred fingers pointing at his throne. He awoke drenched in sweat, but instead of mercy, he unleashed harsher decrees, sending elite soldiers to hunt believers across mountains and deserts, where captives were tied to wooden wheels studded with spikes and rolled down slopes, bones snapping rhythmically like drums of doom, while others were hung upside down and sawed in half, slowly, vertically, their screams unraveling into silence. But something remarkable happened. Rome began to notice the courage blooming beneath brutality, the quiet strength of those who chose death over betrayal, and their stories spread through taverns and training camps, even into the ranks of legionaries themselves, inspiring doubt in the empire's cause. Diocletian's advisors whispered fears that rebellion brewed like storm clouds, and so he retreated into his palace, aging quickly beneath the weight of violence, his legacy corroded by blood. And when at last sickness gnawed at his bones, he abdicated the throne, fleeing from the guilt carved into every shadow, retiring to a palace where he plucked cabbages in silent repentance, the screams of thousands echoing through the gardens of his mind, while Christianity, thought crushed, rose like dawn over the horizon, stronger than ever, its martyrs remembered as symbols of iron courage against tyranny. History would paint Diocletian as both political genius and architect of horror, but through the eyes of the persecuted, he was the tyrant who forged heroes through flames. And as we look back at his brutal reign, we are reminded that power born of fear crumbles, while conviction born of suffering becomes unbreakable. So, dear viewers, as you reflect on this dark chapter of history, where faith clashed with empire and ordinary people became legends through unimaginable torture, remember that resilience can outshine empires, courage can silence cruelty, and justice can rise from ashes like a phoenix. And if you want to uncover more forgotten stories, more shadows behind crowns, and more spine-chilling truths hidden in the pages of time, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us on this journey into the past. Your support fuels the flames of curiosity, and together, we'll ensure these stories are never forgotten. In the uneasy years after Diocletian's retreat, the empire staggered beneath the echo of his brutality, for although the flames of persecution dimmed, fear still clung to the streets like thick smoke, and soldiers, conditioned by cruelty, continued hunting Christians in secret, dragging them into abandoned bathhouses where rusty chains rattled like serpents. Yet whispers spread that the faith was rising stronger, guided by hidden leaders who met in catacombs, candles trembling like tiny stars in the dark. And when captured believers faced torture, many stood firm, their quiet bravery inspiring even their captors. Riots sparked in marketplaces, statues were defaced at night, and in distant provinces Christian symbols appeared carved into temple doors, shaking Rome's pride until finally, under Constantine, sunlight pierced the empire's shadows, granting freedom of worship and ending the reign of torture forever. Proof that no empire can crush conviction. And to explore more untold truths of history, subscribe now and stay with us.